Championship weekend is upon us for college football. The season has gone by fast. About to give you my championship weekend plays. A lot more plays than I was expecting. I was only expecting about 2 or 3, but there's a little bit more than that. But I'm doing things a little bit different this week. I know it's a little bit weird to change things up at the end of the year, but I figure with fewer games and a lot of different set of keys I could use, it would be easier and better to just switch to this, what I'm going to do for this week, and probably bowls as well. So instead of the game-by-game tabs that I had on my spreadsheet, I have more of a matrix this week, and this is what it looks like. So this week I'm running 5 different sets of keys against the spread and a single set of keys for money lines. It's pretty much a matrix. And each set of keys has different criteria that needs to be met. For example, against the spread key set 1, the blender needs to be 4.15 and the dime needs to be 1.19. If all the criteria for the set of keys are met, it is colored in bright green like this one for Oregon. Not all of them are met, then the ones that are met are colored in a lighter green color and not as intense. And keys that aren't met at all are gray and italicized. So for against the spread key set 1, which the blender needs to be 4.15 or greater, dime needs to be 1.19 or greater, we got Oregon, Miami of Ohio, Florida Atlantic, and Ohio State that meet the keys there for ATS key set 1. And for that set of keys on the year, it is 73% against the spread, plus 38.6 units for an ROI of 42.9%. Now keyless, and when I say keyless, that basically means blender greater than 0 and dime greater than 0, and not these numbers right here. So if the blender and dime are greater than 0, it's 53% against the spread on the year for plus 5.3 units or an ROI of 1.2%. That's still profitable, but when you add the keys in there, it just skyrockets it, right? Now, the reason I picked 5 sets of keys this week is I feel like all my sets of keys do something well, and I wanted to make sure all of them were incorporated. So for ATS key set 1, 4 of the games met the criteria. For ATS key set 2, which is blender greater than 4.15, ATM greater than 0.396, dime greater than 1.39, and dollar greater than 0, only Oregon and Florida Atlantic meet all 4 of those sets of keys. On the year, those keys are 75.3% against the spread, plus 39 units for an ROI of 47.6. So it's a little bit more selective, but the ROI is higher. Miami of Ohio almost met all 4. They only met 3 of them. Keyless, though, when blender, ATM, dime, and dollar are greater than 0, instead of these numbers, it's 52% and minus 2.7 units on the year. The keys make all the difference. ATS key set 3, Miami of Ohio and Florida Atlantic meet those sets of keys. Blender greater than 2.07, nickel greater than 2.29, and quarter percentage, not quarter margin, but quarter percentage greater than 0. Now this is only 65.2% against the spread on the year and plus 36.3 units for a 26.9% ROI. But the reason I included that in there is look at its keyless numbers. When blender is greater than 0, nickel greater than 0, and quarter percentage greater than 0. Keyless, it's 56.6% plus 22.8 units. So the fact that it does so well keyless made me want to throw it in there. ATS key set 4, which is blender greater than 4.37, and ATM percentage greater than 0.62%. You have Oregon, Miami of Ohio, Florida Atlantic, Georgia, and Ohio State meeting those sets of keys. This one is 75% ATS on the year, and plus 34.2 units for 46.8%. And you're probably wondering, okay, why'd you include that one while ATS key set 2 does better? Well, it's because it's a little bit less selective and it has the percentage ATM percentage metric in there, which I like. So I wanted to make sure that was in there. And finally, ATS key set 5. This is the one with the greatest percentage against the spread and ROI, which is why I included it. Miami of Ohio and Florida Atlantic meet these sets of keys, which is blender greater than 4.09, nickel greater than 2.69, and dime greater than 1.39. It's the most selective, but it has the highest rate of return. So as you can see, Florida Atlantic meets all 5 sets of keys. They've been a horse I've ridden all year long. They're good. They're 7.5 point favorites at home against UAB in the Conference USA Championship game, and something feels weird with this, right? The fact that my model thinks they're going to win by about 13 to 14, yet they're only 7.5 point favorites. What's going on here? I think I have the answer, and that's Lane Kiffin's status. I feel like the status of Lane Kiffin is dragging down that line to 7.5 when it should be closer to 10 or higher. And it makes a lot of sense. If you look at how teams have played in the past when they know their coach is gone for a championship game, I would say the biggest example would be Houston in 2011 against Southern Miss when they knew Kevin Sumlin was going to be gone. It makes sense. So even though Florida Atlantic looks like the play because they also meet the money line set of keys as well, the only team to do so, you kind of have to wonder how Lane Kiffin's status is going to play here. As far as money line keys are concerned, keyless on the year, which is moneyline ATM percentage greater than 0, quarter greater than 0, and dollar greater than 0, the keyless is still plus 29.35 units for 14% ROI. But when you add the keys in there, which is moneyline ATM greater than 5.75%, quarter greater than 0.75%, and dollar greater than 1.49%, plus 50.38 units, 50.9% ROI on the year. But only Florida Atlantic meets all three sets of keys for this moneyline key set. Georgia is pretty close. The ATM is just about a half percentage point away, but it's just Florida Atlantic this week at minus 280 that's going to be a money line play. So going down the list, you have Oregon at a 6.5 point dog that my model likes. Utah does not meet a single key criteria across the board. The blender thinks Oregon wins by 4, but the ATM thinks Utah wins by 5. So they're not in agreement. And you got to remember, the blender metric I'm using here is the neutral site blender metric, which is a little bit different than the home and away blender metric I use. It's a little bit more unstable, not less predictive, but it's just a little bit more unstable, so you have a lot more weird swings like that. An example being Miami of Ohio. Now, of all the statistics I plug into my blender model, Central Michigan has better stats than Miami of Ohio. Every single stat that is plugged into that. Yet my blender says Miami of Ohio is a 1-point favorite, which is weird, right? Because all the stats being fed into the blender favor Central Michigan, so why? That's the nature of a model like that, is that it turns out that a lot of neutral site games in the past, the better team does not always win or cover. No play on UL Lafayette and Appalachian State. It's pretty mixed. I would say my model was lean towards UL Lafayette, but neither game's a play. And Baylor and Oklahoma, I was surprised that Baylor wasn't a play. I was expecting it to be. And while my model's leaning their direction and Oklahoma doesn't meet any spread keys, it's a no play. Just not a lot of value there. Cincinnati and Memphis. My model leans Memphis. Cincinnati doesn't meet any keys, but Memphis just couldn't get there on the blender. Hawaii and Boise State. Again, my model leans Boise State. Hawaii doesn't meet any of the keys, but Boise just not there on the blender. And where they are there on the blender here on ATS key set 3, they're not there on the nickel. Virginia and Clemson. It's a Virginia lean here, but Virginia is just about a half point away from the blender. If they were at 29, they would be a play, but they're not. I'll keep an eye on that one, though. I might add Virginia if they can get higher as the week goes on, because they're pretty close. Just like Georgia being a potential money line add as the week goes on, they're pretty close too. But this is the matrix that I'm doing this week for my plays. When you go down the list of scores, you have Utah by 1, Central Michigan by 2, Appalachian State by 6, Oklahoma by 8, Florida Atlantic by 13, Memphis by 11, Boise State by 16, LSU by 5, Ohio State by 19, and Clemson by 24. And here is the list of plays for the week. Now I know what you're thinking. You're saying, okay, you bet flat on all these games, even though Florida Atlantic met all 5 of those sets of keys, while Georgia only met 1, so why are you betting the same? Well, I'm just not confident in that approach yet to be betting staggered unit sizes, which makes sense, but I haven't used that approach before, so I'd have to see how it would work in the long run before I use it to bet variable unit sizes. But I am betting 2.5 units on all these games this week, and here's why. I am currently down for the season minus 3.7 units overall. So if I were to go 3-2 against the spread and win the money line pick plus 4.32 units, that would put me over the top going into the bowls. So I'm going for it this week. I'm raising my unit sizes, and I wouldn't say going all in, but it's make or break. If I can have a winning week, I will be profitable going into the bowls. Otherwise, I'll be in a big hole. But that's what I'm looking for. 5 against the spread plays, 1 money line play. Going to try to get it done. Championship week, it's going to be fun. Entertaining games either way, even though I don't have money on some of them, it's going to be an entertaining weekend. Well, that does it for the championship week pick video. I will see you perhaps on Sunday for the recap. Tune in on Thursday for the college basketball week 2 recap video. Until then, this is Sports Betting Truth signing off.